We continue to have kids who are left behind. Look at those things. I look at the landscape of our world today, and you continue to see a gap between those that have and those who don't. So the question becomes, how do we fix that? And although I made the solution sound simple, it's not a simple solution. And my solution was being agents of change. Change is not something we always take. It's not always the easiest thing, right? Would you say so? Would you agree with that? Yes. We're creatures of habit. People are. We go to things that are like us, things that are similar to us, we find comfort in those. So I wasn't here last week, but as this room was set up, is it safe to say that most people sit in the same place every week? Yeah, pretty much?
Not here.
Not here? Okay. But you think about your daily routine. You think about the things that you do and how you do them, the people that are in your life, and how easy we find ourselves in a routine. And so if we were to take a step back and look, who's involved in that? Who are we socializing with? Who are we interacting with? Who are we not interacting with? What is probably the one most frustrating thing that happens when you have to change something?
You have to break that routine.
You have to break that routine. So what happens is, you used to drive to work every day, same way. Then there's a roadblock or detour, and that throws you off because you've got the routine every day. You leave the house at 7:10, you go down this way here, go this way here, and something changes that, disrupts your day. So we become creatures of habit in the sense that we get used to the things that are around us, and we get used to seeing things being the way that they are. But if we are looking to change the landscape of things that we see, we're looking to landscape the change. We're looking to see, we're looking to change the landscape of our community. We're looking to change the landscape of the things that we see or that we recognize as social injustices, that we have to change how we do things. So, the example that I always give, when you look at populations, and I'm going to talk diversity just a tad bit here. And I'm going to use basketball simply because when I got to Kentucky, that was the first thing that just hit me. So, I mean, they hit me in the face too. Yeah, good. Yeah. So, we'll split this room right in half here. And we'll just say this side of the room is going to be University of Kentucky. This side of the room is going to be University of Louisville. And just to throw it off, we'll have you be Western Kentucky University.
Can I be Ohio State?
So we have 3 different representations right there of basketball in the state of Kentucky. So if I were to tell you all that I want this group to come together as one, take the canvas that is up here, and design me something related to Kentucky basketball, most likely that the board across there is probably going to be as blue can see. Probably just a small piece of red. And you probably couldn't tell if that's University of Louisville or West Kentucky. My point being is when we're seeking change and we're looking to do things differently, we have to consistently look at those who are not represented and look at the strength of the entire, look at the strength of the whole instead of the part. So if I talk about Kentucky basketball, that's one thing. But if I were to look at the rich tradition of basketball in Kentucky, in my mind, it brings more to the table. The last 2 years of national championship basketball teams have come out of Kentucky. with University of Louisville, University of Kentucky. But if you again look at the history of basketball, not even just Division I basketball, you look at the history of basketball here in this city, with Gratiot, Kentucky, Western. And again, we start to look across the landscape of Western Kentucky. We see that when we bring the different pieces together, we have a much stronger tradition of basketball. So when we're looking at trying to strengthen our community, again, when we're looking at ways to improve upon some of the social injustices that we see, we have to be intentional in our efforts to be inclusive of those who are not being represented. So with a community like Owensboro, 60,000 people or so, something like that, we're looking at about a total population, minority population, of maybe 9%. That's total. If you look at the county, the numbers get, obviously the numbers get smaller with the minority representation, but they get larger as a total population. So again, when we're starting to look at the things that affect people, who's not at the table? Now, I was just speaking about ethnic minority, but we also have socioeconomic minority. So when we're putting things together and we're planning, and this is one of the challenges that this city is a wonderful city, but this city has challenges, and I speak to these any chance that I get, is we have to be inclusive of people who are not involved. I can't put something together because I think that's what you want. I need to include you in that process. So at the college, as part of my primary job is to make sure that we are doing what we need to do in those regards. So I talked about personal habit. I talked about being creatures of habit, and we do what it is we do. And I want to bring the point back when we're looking at trying to influence change and be change agents. So we have to consistently make ourselves go against the grain. So if we're looking at maybe going to work a different way one day, or trying something different at a restaurant instead of getting our favorite go-to. So if we're looking to implement change within our community, if we're looking to improve the percentage, if we're looking to reduce the percentage of high school dropouts, if we're looking to improve the percentage of college readiness, if we're looking to improve the economic development for our local citizens, then we have to not only be involved ourselves, but we have to consistently take a look at those who are not at the table and figure out why. So my work in public health, Roger mentioned that I'm working on a degree in public health, which feels like I've been working on it forever. 6 years, so we're getting close. But when he talked to me about social justice, and he talked to me about wanting to just speak to you all, I had a lot of things racing through my mind that I could talk about. But one of the most important things that just kept coming up was, being an agent of change, which is something I didn't talk about at the MLK celebration, but it's just as important now as it was then when I discussed it earlier. We have to be agents of change. We have to be the ones that are out there that are creating and cultivating the opportunities for change. We're talking about change within our individual small communities, change within organizations, looking at policies and different things and how we do those. If we wish to see improvement in these areas, these are sort of the things that we have to do. Sometimes we think about ourselves, which is human nature. It's human nature for us to think about the things that we do in our routine. But when we're looking to really have an impact, we have to be able to make an assessment of our current situation within our community, and then really be able to rally and be an agent of change and be a representative or help bring in folks who are not being represented. With that, I will leave you. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Yes.
I was at the MLK event, and I thought you were really brave to say that Owensboro still had some work to do. Although I've lived here for many years, I'm not from Owensboro, and even today, or people will say, "Oh, you're not from here, are you?" And I'll say, "Well, no, I'm not." So I really appreciated your comment, because my theory is that we have a lot of closet racists. They'll say one thing in public and then something else in private. And so I just thought you were really brave.
Well, thank you. Here's my take on that. I felt like one of the two things was going to happen, and I'd be saying that. Either it was going to hopefully spark some change, or somebody was going to move me on out the door. And I was perfectly okay with taking the risk of that. When you talk about closet races, I really try. I do agree with you in that regard, in some cases, but I really try to be careful how I present it, in the sense that I don't want someone to say, well, he's going to use the race card and say this and say that. But I think there are other ways that I can try to empower people. See, it's one thing for Loitas to say it, but if we can bring in more people, and where more people are saying it. It's almost kind of like the politicians do in some regard, or grassroots organizations when they want to see a real change in something. They a lot of times start flooding calls with to the local politicians and the representatives there. Sometimes we have to do that. So it's one thing for me to say it, but if I can get the message out and get everyone else to see the message that we're trying to deliver. So, one fist packs an okay punch, but if you put a lot of fists together, then you can have a mighty powerful impact. So that is my take on that. We do have some work to do. And there are some biases, as I like to call them, that exist with people based on their race, based on their socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, various other things. Those biases exist. Yes?
So I think I appreciate that it's very important to invite people to the table who have an interest in whatever is at stake. It seems that sometimes, both locally and beyond, nationally, those who have the greatest stakes aren't always willing or maybe able to come to the table. In your experience, or in your opinion, how do you do that? What are the most important factors? Obviously, inviting them would be secondhand, but how else? How do you get people to the table if they're not there?
Very good point. It takes people like us who are in positions to, first of all, remind everyone else that this is an important missing piece. So if we're looking to, I don't know, make changes about, let's just throw this out there, school systems, charter schools. I think we have great school systems here compared to what I've seen where I grew up. But let's just say we're going to make charter schools. A lot of people make charter schools. And the people who are going to be left out of that are probably going to be the low socioeconomic individuals. Then what we have to do is we have to find champions within that group. We have to find champions within that group and bring them to the table. And that it can be difficult. But at the same time, what happens a lot of times people are left out is because when the group comes together, they've not thought once or twice about the actual people in that group. And what I mean by that is getting them there, getting them informed, because we think we know what other people want. So I think I know what Molly wants. So I think she would like this, so we're going to do this. Instead of asking Molly. And we have to make people want, you have to create the buy-in, just like anything else. Just like the commercials, people reach a point to make a decision. And we have to create buy-in. And then there's trust. There are trust issues. There are serious trust issues when you look at low socioeconomic and ethnic minorities to some degree with public officials and folks that are in making those type of decisions, because I don't know why you want me here until I can feel that I can trust that the reason you want me here is a good reason, then there is some sort of distrust there. Yes, sir.
Change is like everything else. It itself is not necessarily good or bad. I think it's a built-in tendency to resist change, but I think it's also a fallacy to just be for change, thinking if I change, it'll be better. For example, 50 years ago or so, the government put a big tax on yachts. They were going to soak those SOBs. When they buy a yacht, they're going to get a big cut of money. Well, what the SOBs did, just went to another country and got their yacht and registered it there and avoided the tax. So everybody wanted to sort of be able to fix it up here. So what I'm saying is that change itself needs to be evaluated. And I think right now something very current is going on is this minimum wage. You can read somebody and boy, it's just this thing that's come along like a shirt pocket, but then you read something else, all the side effects that's going to come from it is going to hurt us. So change is difficult to make.
You said a very important word that is essential when implementing change, and that's assessments. So, as individuals, we have to make assessments of the stuff that we hear. We have to make assessments about what's in the news. We have to make assessments about things you hear come across the scanner. Because if you look at information, I have alerts that come to my phone. I don't know how many people do that. And based on the media outlet, the message has changed to some degree. So you are right. We can scream for change, but if we have not done due diligence and made initial assessments, and then really created a vision of where we want to go, then you're right. It's not going to matter what you change. But one of the most important things is being able to make an assessment. Okay, what's going on now? Why is this way? What works? What doesn't work? What are the consequences of it? What are the negative consequences of this? What are the positive, the benefits of it? And then from that point, being able to move on. Now, you gave the example of minimum wage. Being able to just weigh and decide, well, are these consequences worth raising that? And keep in mind, the folks that are going to make that decision. So we have to, if we have beliefs or values about it, we have to try to influence them. Because quite likely they're being influenced already. Maybe by lobbyists, maybe by somebody else.
We've already had, last night we had a phone call, an automated phone call, and it was, I don't know what group it was, but, you know, remember? But they were spreading fear about the minimum wage hike. Telling me that, I don't know what they wanted us to do about it. We hung up, so we don't know what to do. But they wanted you to go out and vote somewhere against minimum wage hike. So, yeah, we're just spreading fear. They prey on people and hope they can get them afraid enough to.
Because fear, we're programmed as humans to respond, have a quick response to fear. I was listening to something, he's a neuroscientist, he studies the amygdala, which is sort of where the emotions for fear are housed. And I cannot remember his name, just can't remember his name. But that happens a lot because people are banking on you not getting the full information, not making the full assessment, and not listening. Small messages. Think about the commercials that you watch, or your favorite commercial, and the things that you hear. Sometimes it's just a jingle, sometimes it's something catchy, but usually it's very short. And that's what sticks with you. So if they can put that information out, regardless of how true it is, but frame it in such a way, unfortunately, it becomes effective in some regards.
Yeah. If fear is one of our enemies, then I think cynicism would be in the realm of what you're talking about, the other big thing. Because, and especially if you're a member of, the minority, a minority group, or these groups that are being shorted. And you just look around and you see all the, we live in a country where we're spending more on prisons than we are on education. Most of the vast majority of people in prisons are African Americans or other minorities. The disproportionate, share of wealth between the very wealthy and the poor, and it keeps getting bigger. And everybody sees that and knows that. And it creeps into, middle class people who want to do the right thing. I find myself becoming increasingly cynical just because of all the overwhelming odds of all that.
Yeah. It's hard to, like, where do you start?
Yeah, and part of what you're talking about is, addressing that and,
But you have to have, the challenge is having a united voice, and then really finding those people, filtering out those who are for themselves, and trying to find people who are for the common cause, and working toward that. But it is a challenge, and there are times you're like, what is the use? And, going back to what Molly, the original question you asked, sometimes people don't have hope, so they say, well, excuse me, doesn't really matter. You're going to do what you want to do anyway. Why are you including me?
Let me just, addressing, David, your particular question, and the original idea of capitalism was a book by Adam Smith, 1700s. And in that, he talked about the paradox of thrift. Huh?
Speak up so far.
The paradox of thrift. Have you ever heard about that? Have you ever heard that concept? The fact that people who need money are getting more money means that those people are going to use that money in the economy. It's going to go into the economy. And Adam Smith opined in 1756 that in order for a free market to work, money has to be working in the system all the time. The paradox of thrift is that if you save money too much, it hurts the economy. So if a corporation is amassing wealth, or an individual is amassing wealth, they're not really helping the economy. The people that are helping the economy are the millions of workers who are getting a few bucks more an hour.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to make as an example, and maybe I'm off base here, but, what's going on in downtown Owensboro, which, on one level is wonderful, and you can see its progress, but I think it's also just an example of how most of the resources, public money, it's easy to put it into something like that benefits the wealthy, and of course all the wealthy people jump on board, and they're the ones that are going to benefit economically from all that. And you're just not, it's really, you just don't see that kind of thing going on, or things that help lower income people, going on. And I see it to some extent, it's a little bit, we saw when we were, somewhere we saw a documentary on gentrification of Brooklyn and how they've taken, put all this money into and run all poor people out, basically. And I see what happened in the downtown, to a lesser extent, there's some of that going on. I mean, that's not a big issue there, but.
What it costs to Mexican restaurants.
I'm just saying, huge influx of public money, and it is, on many levels a wonderful thing, but you just don't get that kind of thing going on to benefit lower income groups. It just doesn't happen hardly anywhere in the country.
I will say this, I'm not, I agree. I'm not low income, I'm not high income, but I'm not low income. I've yet to go to the park. And it's not because I am boycotting or anything, it's not anything like that. It goes back to some of the things I spoke about earlier. I don't know if I was very, very clear about that. But being inclusive, which that process itself was not an inclusive process, I don't feel that a lot of the changes in the city are for me. So when you look at, just seriously, people can say, well, that's not true. We're doing this for all our citizens. We're doing this, we're doing that. But as I mentioned at the celebration speech, when I look at the marketing of this city, I don't see my face. I don't see anyone similar to me. I don't feel, I've lived here for almost 12 years, and I don't feel that connection. I have to go out and get it, but I don't really feel that connection. Now, what my family, what we do is what I like to call, we sometimes they say you have to come up for air, sometimes. So what we do to come up for air is we leave town. I mean, unfortunately, that's what it is. We leave town. We go to Nashville, we go back to Arkansas, go to Atlanta, we go somewhere else. We come up for air. Because although it's a great community, I will say this, it's a great community in the sense of the low crime, raising a family, because there are a lot of different places across the United States you do not want to do that. You wouldn't want to raise your family. So in that regard, it is a nice place. I've seen worse. We are making some changes and we are moving forward on some things. But again, it's not to benefit everyone. It's to benefit pretty much
Well, those are the power brokers. Those are the people in power,
And until we come together collectively, in some way, shape, form, or fashion to change that, that's what we'll see. Until we can apply pressure in the sense to where they see you coming, it's like, oh, wow, here he comes. Because then, only then they're going to know that you're business, and they're going to take it. Because they know, again, that's what I said earlier. I said I can speak, but when you've got multiple people speaking on behalf of something, and sometimes I've heard conversations where politicians have called people and said, okay, we get it, tell them to quit calling. I mean, that's what we have to do in a sense, is we have to make them get it. But we have to have ourselves together first. We have to be collective in our efforts. We have to be strategic. We have to know what that vision is that we want. And then when we have that, and we have our grassroots built from the bottom up, and we're making progress, only then will they truly listen. All the other stuff is just, I think, for display. They do and say some things for fun, but they're not genuine about it. But to your point, that seems to be what's happening. Most definitely. So,
It seems to me that a lot of times the only thing that gets anything done is money. You hit somebody's pocketbook, like the blacks boycotting the buses in the South, and that got them the right to ride the bus and not have to move to the back of the bus. What would happen in communities like this one and others if the blacks and the gays and the Mexicans and whoever else decided we're not going to contribute to this economy anymore, we're not going to work here anymore, we're not going to buy anything here anymore, so function without it and see what happens. You hit people where their pocketbook is, and suddenly a light bulb comes on. It's like, oh yeah, you're equal to me.
I think you're right. I think the only problem that we have here is that our community is so homogeneous in the regard that it's not the diversity that do exist is small compared to a large scale. So how big of an impact would we be able to have?
Right.
But you are right on the money, because a lot of times when people may have a stance about this or a different stance about that, at the end of the day, when the dollars stop coming, they're going to want to make some changes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
This doesn't apply too much, I guess, to what we're talking, but I cringe every time I see an ad advertising the lottery that's put on by our own government. Yes, and I'm against it, I guess, from a religious viewpoint, but that's not my point here. It's the poor man's tax is the slang name for it. And just think the housewife trying to do for grocery shopping for the week, but she can spare $2 or $3 just for a lottery ticket. And then they set it in the name of education.
Yeah, and the question you have to look at is education really benefiting you? As much as they say. I don't have those numbers, but every lottery that's been set up recently, like I said, from Arkansas, and recently they set up a lottery for Mega Millions, Powerball, and those lottery things. And that's the first thing that they talk about is how the education would benefit from it. And again, I don't have the numbers, but it'll be interesting to see what they say.
Just the flip side of the whole, which what you're saying is completely true, but the flip side of that is as money, as the disparity in income increases, the rich get more and more power in our system. And that's what makes me the most cynical, really.
Well, and that's because, again, the laws that are made and the policies that are in place are to benefit them.
Right.
So until we can infiltrate that and begin to make those changes, then we'll continue to have that. Yes, sir.
With regard to the lottery and education, initially, if funding from the government was maintained at a state level, they would benefit. But what happens is the government says, well, we're getting all this money now from the lottery, so we're going to reduce our money. So you end up basically maintaining status quo on the cost of education.
Well, you're right.
It doesn't really go up.
I can tell you from just being an administrator for about working in college for 7 or 8 years, we consistently hear that one day we might as well say we're not state-funded colleges. Because in a sense, are we? Because every year, less and less is appropriated. So I agree with that.
I article in the paper today on that very thing, the schools get less from the state each year. On the front of that.
So the question becomes, where's the money going?
Yes. But from personal experience, going back to what Dixie said about people with money have power, up until about 10 years ago, my husband and I lived in a neighborhood just a few blocks south of here. And we were very diverse in the sense that we had people with maybe GEDs and people with PhDs, and we were diverse economically as well. And it seemed like, oh gosh, well, for many years that we lived there, the city and businesses wanted to invade our residential neighborhood and turn it into a commercial neighborhood. And we would all band together, we would do the research, and we would show up at planning and zoning to the point where, like you said, they've got, okay, here they come again. And I will say that we won every battle where they tried to put a business in a residential neighborhood, one of which was a gun range across the street from homes that had children in those homes. So if you do band together and you do show up at City Hall, which I even had this experience a year ago where they tried to do something in the current neighborhood where I live, you have to go down there and you have to present your case, and it's a matter of taking people with you. And we've even done petitions, and so we have been successful that way. But I get tired of constantly having to defend a residential neighborhood because the people with money want to come in there and buy the property because it's cheap and we can put a gun range here and we can do this, that. So that's been my experience.
And I agree, to speak to that, we really just have to learn how the game is played.
Yes.
So once you figure out, you're not going to show up to a basketball game with a baseball bat and a glove. If you do, you're not going to be very successful, whatever it is you're intending to do. But if you learn the game is being played, when are they meeting? Are they meeting? What are some of the things that they're doing? So again, learning the game as best we can, so that when we do show up, that we can be more effective in our efforts.
We have a community outreach program with our congregation, and we're a small group, but we try to reach out to the community. We donate to homeless shelters. We've recently started a program with the international, what is it? The Burmese population to kind of help them. Do you have any other ideas of things that we, as a small congregation, might be able to do to reach minorities?
everybody, and this is not an indictment of them by saying this, because I'm on the board there. But everybody, when somebody wants to do something and wants to help, and I think they're genuine about it, everyone wants to run to the Devlin Center. And I love the Devlin Center, and I'm a board member there, and I love the work that we do. And I'm saying that because I'm glad that you asked that question. There are other organizations you can look at. There are some things that are going on at the Devlin Center. Sister Fran Wilheim with Central Latina. That's another potential resource. I have to reach out to some constituents of mine in the high schools to see if there are any other opportunities that exist. I don't know many at the top of my head. But I made that comment about the Devlin Center because so many times I've heard people say, that center over there, or that center that's isolated here, or well, we want to do something, we'll just go, we'll do it for the Devlin Center over there. And the Devlin Center is a community center. It's part of this community, but a lot of times it's sort of segregated or sectioned off for when people want to do something. And again, it's because I can step away from it and do whatever I want to do on my own terms when I want to, and then leave it. But it's a community center, and it's part of this community, and they're doing some wonderful things. So those are two off the top of my head. I mean, I think it's great that you all are doing those things, and I will get with some of the folks at the high schools that I know to look at some other opportunities if you'd like.
Great, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Just to add to that, I recently got an email from Andy Campbell, who is the pastor of Century Christian Church on Tamarack, right there by the flashing lights. If you guys, it's the real steeple church. They're expanding their community garden this coming spring, and he had sent me an email soliciting donations, and also if anybody has a green thumb that might want to help tend a raised bed. They donate the produce to various local organizations. And so if that's anybody's cup of tea, holler at me and I'll put you in touch with Reverend Andy for what it's worth.
Good, good.
Well, if you all don't have anything else, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. I felt like I've bounced around on a lot of topics, but I felt like it's good because it feels like it's really created some great conversation. I'm honored that you all have asked me to come here and speak before you today. And again, I thank you, and I say I enjoyed my time here. I enjoyed my time here, so thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.